Tonight we're going to talk about a very important topic, a very important question, that is, how do I find a church? Welcome to this episode of the Word Unbound. The Word Unbound exists to help Christians be more biblically minded by answering common questions through the lens of Scripture. My name is Conrad Mills, and today I'm here with Will Sanderson.
Good evening, Conrad.
Good evening.
How are you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic.
Tonight we're going to talk about a very important topic, a very important question, that is, how do I find a church?
Yeah, it's a pretty important question. And I would say it's a pretty big deal.
Wish we had more time to talk about it.
Yeah, me too. But it's one of those things that I think this is a conversation. If you're actually asking this question, you should get a lot of input on it.
You know, and that's a great question to ask.
Right? It is. And especially, and I've kind of had this conversation because I've had people come up to me and ask this before. Like, hey, I'm moving. Hey, my parents are looking for a thing or whatever, right? Or the big one that we deal with in student ministries a lot is, I'm going off to college. How do I find a church when I get there? Especially in so much as you are able, and I understand there are times where you're unable to decide where you live and when you live there and things like that. But in regards to maybe choosing a college or taking this job in a different city or not taking this job and things like that, I think where you go to church should be probably bigger than which college you're going to go to. When you're talking about your spiritual life, what's going to set you up, I think that's more important. So if you're looking at two colleges, one that has a good local church and one that doesn't. Now, it's, by God's grace, we live in a country that has a lot of really good local churches, right? And so that's probably not an issue most of the time. But some of the time it might be.
Yeah.
And there are some universities that I can think of that don't have a whole lot of churches near them that I would recommend. But that being said, I do think that this question needs to be bigger in the minds of people than maybe it is. It's kind of almost an afterthought. Let me get the job, then I'll figure out the church. And I think that should be flipped.
Well, as a Christian, your church is more important than your secular job.
It is.
It is your fellowship. You're gathering with the local believers that believe the same way you do about whatever it may be, whether it be ecclesiology or soteriology. You should be at a like-minded church that believes the Bible. So if I'm going to a new area, if I'm moving to a new area, and I say, what should I look for in a healthy local church?
Well, you should know what you're looking for one.
So what am I looking for?
You're looking for expositional preaching.
Okay.
You're looking for ones that have good understanding of conversion, what it is and what it isn't. You're looking for a church that has elders. You're looking for a church that practices baptism, that practices the Lord's Supper, that also has church membership and church discipline. You're looking for a church with sound doctrine, with biblical doctrine, that practices evangelism and missions. I think those are the 9.
Okay.
That's. But you're looking for all of those, and that's where I say, like, this is a conversation because, especially get someone on your side that kind of probably knows maybe a good amount of theology. If that's not you, maybe enlist a pastor or something like that who can kind of read between the lines when they read a doctrinal statement saying, ooh, okay, like it says this. But the thing is so many websites and so many doctrinal statements these days are so vague. They're pretty inoffensive, or it may not actually be what that church teaches when you get there. So you always got to check it out.
Well, and two, you've got to look at that doctrinal statement, and if you have questions, which unless it's a extremely well written doctrinal statement, you will,
right? Yeah.
Go ask the elders. Go ask the people who are employed by the church who are pastoring God's people there. And if you know what you believe about something, and you can tell me from the Bible why, and the people that you're asking can't tell you where they stand on something. I'm not saying that's the time to go somewhere else right then and there, but that's a big red flag.
Yeah. Well, but also notice what's not on that list. All those things I listed off. Now, it's not exhaustive, right? But what's not on that list is their men's ministry, their
graphic design,
the age of most of the congregants, their children's ministry, the music that they sing, or the style in which they sing it, how long the sermons are, or how high the or dim the lights are. None of that's on there. Those things are preferential. Those things aren't commanded. Now, that may be what causes you to pick one church over another that are similar. They're on equal pegging. They have all those things I listed off, and then those you may choose that. And also remember, you talk about men's ministry and women's ministry. Like, understand that you're joining a fellowship. These people that you're going to covenant together with, that you're going to cry together, that you're going to marry and you're going to bury and you're going to do life with for potentially the rest of your life, right? That's the kind of commitment you're looking at when you're looking at church. So some of those things matter, who those people are and things like that. But don't be looking for a perfect church, because they don't exist. And if you find one, don't go to it, because you're going to make it imperfect, because we all are.
Yeah, and I think something to remember too is you're looking for a church, one church to commit to. You're not looking to go to this church for midweek Bible study, this church on Sunday morning, and maybe this church on Sunday night. It's not a pick what you like here and what you don't like there. That's not what we're doing here when we pick a church. A church.
Yeah, it's not one for men's ministry and then we send the kids that one.
It's not a buffet.
It's not. And that means that you're going to make compromises on some things that you maybe wish your church did differently. But that's where submission to the elder comes into play, because submission is not always easy. If it were easy, it wouldn't probably be commanded as often as it is. Yeah. And so there may be things going on behind the scenes that you think, why in the world does my church do that? Well, I guarantee the elders have thought long and hard about it, and they've made that decision for the sake of the flock. You may not agree with it. You may not see all the factors that are at play there, but they love you, and they're trying to shepherd you well. If they're good shepherds, and there may be bad shepherds out there. I mean, obviously, we are warned about them.
Well, I don't think there are, and that's just the sad reality of it.
Well, I mean, we have 2 books in the Bible dedicated to it, right?
Exactly.
Jude and 2 Peter are pretty concerned about false teachers, and so they exist. Waterless clouds are out there, and that's where you have to discern.
And when you're looking for a church too, I don't think it's bad to, like I mentioned before, ask questions of the pastors.
Oh yeah, grill them.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that the pastor would appreciate that.
Right.
I mean, that shows that somebody cares. That shows that somebody that doctrine matters to people, and I would argue it matters far more than it should to evangelical Christianity in America these days. But that's something that's important. Know what they believe. Know why they believe it. Know what chapter and verse is attached to everything on their doctrinal statement, and really work through that.
Yeah, and also just sit there and say, hey man, how can I serve if I come here? And
what needs do you have?
What needs do you have? Here's where I feel like I'm gifted. How can I help? And be ready to get your hands dirty. Like I remember in Kentucky going up to my pastor, and I was, I think, like 21 at the time. Just told him, dude, I just want to serve. I don't care if I got to clean toilets. Just put me to work. And he's like, well, we have someone to do that, but why don't you go talk to the youth guy? And man, I think just having that kind of attitude of just like, I just want to serve. I just want to be involved. Knowing that every fellowship is going to have its imperfections. I've gone to some of the visited and talked to pastors of some of the most solid churches that you'll ever find. And they'll all tell you it's not perfect here. No. People will make mistakes, and will happen. And be ready for that. Don't be looking for this perfect church, because then what you'll end up doing is probably not going to church.
Yeah.
And so, and also on that topic of grace in regards to the local church, don't compare your senior pastor to the online preachers you may listen to.
No.
That's not necessarily fair. Those guys, some of them are just so uniquely gifted, once in a generation kind of guys, and it's not fair to necessarily, compare them.
Yeah, it's a, every church has its imperfection, every church has its strength, every church has its weakness, but there are solid Bible teaching, gospel proclaiming churches out there that love God and love His Word, and therefore love one another.
Yeah. So, but practically finding a local church, continue to have this conversation so that way when you walk into a church, you know what you're looking for. And then also just a shout out just to help look for some church engines. I think we've posted on that.
We recommended some,
Yeah, but
it was the Master's Seminary Church.
The Mothership,
of course. Then 9 Marks.
9 Marks,
another ministry that we both love.
Yeah.
And then Acts 29, a church planting network. that has
kind of a denomination, but
I would say it's a denomination, but that's a different episode.
Yeah, and they're international. I have a buddy
so is 9 Marks in the Master
That's
Seminary.
true. That's true. I have a buddy leaving a 9 Marks church, like the mothership of the 9 Marks church, and he's going to Japan, and he was able to find Acts 29 church through their network. So those things are helpful, but they're not all foolproof, right?
No, they're not. There are. I mean, even 9 Marks says at the bottom of their church engine, just because a church is on here does not mean it's endorsed.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so you're going to have outliers in every church engine you ever use, whether it's a good one like the 3 we mentioned, or you might find more outliers at other ones, but those are 3 that are extremely helpful: the Master Seminary, 9 Marks, and Acts 29.
Yeah, so absolutely. Or if you're Presby, I mean, go to your denomination
PCA,
first. Start
PCA.
there. Yeah, I mean, but if you have a denomination that you're affiliated with, maybe you're looking at those places. Start there. But also obviously we would recommend those 3 as well. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for listening to this episode of the Word Unbound. We pray this information was helpful for you, and if it was, give us a follow and a share. We'll see you next time.
See you later.